Who is going to be the next Marlins manager? The interviews have started. We're going to recap on some of those names. Plus, the big news dropping yesterday. World Baseball Classic field and pools have been finalized. We should have talked about it yesterday. We ran out of time, so we're going to touch on it today. All on today's Locked On Marlins.
You are Locked On Marlins, your daily podcast on the Miami Marlins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Greetings from Great and welcome to Locked On Marlins. This is your daily Marlins podcast and the Tuesday episode of Locked On Marlins. Thank you for joining me. I'm your host, Peter Pratt, and thank you for making Locked On Marlins your first listen of the day. If you want to follow me, hit me up on Twitter, guys. No TikToks, no Instas. The Twitter handle at Miami Marlins _UK. You need to change that. Miami Marlins _GB. That's what I need to go with. If you are listening in podcast form, hit subscribe there too. Leave a review. Why not? It's available free and everywhere, and there's still 5 episodes a week, even though the Marlins haven't played for weeks. And if you're watching on YouTube, you will know there is a YouTube channel. Hit subscribe there too. And you will see Shaun Barrett is back in the house. We are in the same year. We are recording this on a Monday, but this is coming to you on a Tuesday. Feels like a Craig David song. Nevertheless, Shaun, how are we doing?
I hope we don't get to the end of the week. I'm not in that song anyway. I'm still a bit under the weather, but we move on.
Day to day. We remain day to day. It's definitely been, it's been a bit of a struggle, but we're plowing on. We're plowing on. Nevertheless, Shaun, we've got some news around the World Baseball Classic, which, okay, we're still in postseason mode right now. And rightly so, everyone's eyeballs are all locked and loaded on the postseason. And it's going to be a fun couple of weeks, obviously. But we look a little bit further ahead into March. And it seems like a long way away. But all of a sudden, we have the pools confirmed. And we're waiting on who were going to be the qualifiers and where were they going to be placed. We obviously knew that Great Britain had qualified. The expectation, or what I was led to believe, and I'm not a specialist in this area, and the people I was asking clearly weren't specialists either. They were telling me Great Britain will likely be in Pool A. They're not. They're in Pool C. Great Britain with the US of A, Mexico, Colombia, and Canada all happening in Phoenix, Arizona, March 11th to 15th. Huge news drop in there. From a Great British perspective, Shaun, what a pool.
It's amazing, isn't it? I mean, it's their first time ever in the tournament. And to be playing against, any of the teams there, they are the world's finest. But to get to see them play against the USA specifically, immediately after a World Cup where England and USA are playing in the Football World Cup. I mean, how nice of us is it to at least let them win at their own game? Because realistically, what are we expecting? I'm not expecting anything other than 4 losses ultimately. But to be there, to be on that big stage, for UK, Great British baseball is absolutely massive. To see some Marlins studs in GB uniform is going to be so exciting. I am looking forward to this tournament more than I have anything in a long time, because I've followed baseball for many, many years and it's always been super niche, and it's still pretty niche, don't get me wrong, but this is going to put us on that big stage is just a fantastic thing to look forward to, and to be playing in the US as well, not only against the US but in the US, is going to be huge for the Great Britain and baseball for the whole of the nation.
Me too. Do you know what, mate? It's funny, right? Because they're clearly trying to grow the game in the UK and Great Britain and Europe. Obviously, they're committing to the London series again, and they're doing a game or two as well in Paris and France. So they're committing to this market. And I think it's strategic. It feels strategic almost. I don't know the ins and outs, and maybe I'm completely way off on this, but it feels strategic to put Great Britain in with the USA and to know that you have a marquee matchup there where it's going to be Great Britain and USA in one of the games. And in reality, it's marquee matchups against, a few of the other nations there too, no doubt. But if they would have been in Pool A, for example, which was mooted, you're playing against the Netherlands, Italy. There are other European teams. Like, that's not going to get the juices flowing like a game against USA in a market that MLB is clearly trying to grow. And I think it's strategic, but I think that strategy benefits us and, our fan base. And I'm pretty sure Jazz Chisholm will be licking his lips and be ready to rock and roll in that game. I mean, it'll be absolutely stunning. Like you said, we've also got Ian Lewis, finalized yet, but, there's going to be at least 2 Marlins players there. And there's also some other Marlins players dotted around. Well, ex-Marlins guys, I guess, dotted around because Georgie Alfaro likely will be playing for Colombia. Harold Ramirez too, hitting Harold. There's a few other guys dotted around too. So, there's going to be some kind of Marlins wrinkles knocking around. But yeah, for us as great British guys, and this is going to be, to call out, the first time I would have ever followed this tournament. Like when it happened last time around, which was 2017? Is that right? Is that the last time? I'm kind of confused of times and dates, but excuse me. The last time I didn't have the awareness. I just about understood what a balk was. That's a lie. I didn't know what that was. And but this tournament kind of passed me by last time around. Didn't know enough about baseball, but now fully in. I think this is going to be a completely different vibe and viewing experience for sure. So, it's going to be a lot of fun. Just to kind of add into the other piece, Panama are going into Pool A. The Czech Republic, which I think they had a hard-fought game with Spain, and they also qualified to the Czech Republic in Pool B, where the Miami-based pool, Nicaragua into that one as well, which looks a loaded one at the top anyway, with Puerto Rico, Venezuela, and the Dominican all in there with Israel. So, boy, oh boy, that pool in Pool D in Miami looks absolutely wild. The other thing, Shaun, as well, with the Miami obviously hosting not just group, but knockout and the final, is we're going to get a look at a fully packed out Lone Depot for the first time in a long time. And I am very excited to see the atmosphere in Lone Depot and what that looks and feels like. And the other thing then is what the Marlins can try and, can they build on that somehow? Is there a way where they can kind of capture some of that and build on that as they go through into the regular season in 2023? But that's going to be very intriguing to see, right? Lone Depot absolutely rocking.
Yeah, I mean, it's happened before. Tournaments before, a lot of the games were hosted there, and yeah, I mean, it's a fantastic stadium, and it's let's put it frankly, it's underutilized, being used by the Miami Marlins, a team that only sell out opening day and probably only just each year. So yeah, to see it in its full capacity is kind of like a nod to what maybe one day it could be. If the Marlins ever put a run together, I mean, it's such a shame, and I think we've talked about this before, about the idea that the time that they did make the playoffs, we were in a season where there were no fans, so we've never really seen it at its full capacity as far as what it could be as a stadium and be as a venue, and an atmosphere for the Marlins. So just to see it, even though it won't be with the Marlins, let's hope that in the later games there are some Marlin players to see there. That would be exciting for them, I'm sure.
Yeah.
To be playing these massive games in their home stadium. Could Jazz get to the point where he's playing big games in Marlins Park? Probably not, but it's certainly something worth dreaming about. That's for sure.
Oh, no doubt. Listen, I don't. Maybe you were. If Team GB make it all the way through to the knockout and they end up having a knockout game in Miami, let me just put it out there right now. I'm going to that game. I don't care even if I don't have tickets, I don't care. I'm just going to go and stand outside and look at the home run sculpture. I don't care. What an absolute experience that would be. Imagine Great Britain facing off against someone in a knockout game in Miami. I mean, it just feels like in and around that. And I'm sure you'd be the same, Shaun. I think we'd have to double up on that one. And we'd I guess, leave the wives at home. I guess it is what it is. I mean, it's going to be fun. I'm excited about it. It's got the extra juice of GB for certain, but I think the tournament itself is going to be fun. And I'm excited to see that for sure. Speaking of fun, it's time to talk about our friends over at BetOnline, of course. And for those that are watching, you can see the sexy graphics that continue. I absolutely love these. And betonline.net, it's your number one source for football betting info this season. What I do need to check out, just thinking about it, is who are the favorites for the World Baseball Classic. Surely the US must be up there. I know their team looks real strong. So US, I'm going to assume our favorites. I will dig out those odds next time around. You can find all the latest play news, podcasts, and in-depth articles and analysis on every game you can find. And as always, BetOnline, huge source for all your sport wagering information with live betting and up-to-the-minute scores for every sport out there. The fastest and easiest way to check in on your favorite games and events. It includes MLB, MMA, boxing, and golf. You can head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay, Shaun, let's get into managerial discussions. The Marlins, they've at least had 3 interviews that have been reported. There may have been others. I don't know. Modern day world, Zoom interviews can happen. But we know that 3 have happened. And the betting favorite, just to go back to BetOnline, the betting favorite in advance of any news or interviews was that Joe Maddon, I believe, was the favorite before anything said. Joe Maddon has had an interview with the Marlins. He was your personal pick, I believe, for if they were going to go, they are going for a new manager. So Joe Maddon, I believe, was your personal favorite heading into this. We haven't seen any reporting after that to say whether it went well, good, bad, indifferent, what the next steps are. But still, Joe Maddon, your favorite?
I think so. I think as far as I'm not too interested in like a household name. Obviously, Joe Maddon is a household name, but just for being a household name, but he is a guy that I think is a good manager. I think he's not only, I mentioned this before, not only is he sort of sabermetrically inclined, or at least that's my understanding, but he also he's got a personality. And as much as I like Mattingly, and as much as he did a good job to a certain degree, a character he was not. And I think sometimes that's important. I think for a team, when things are going well, you want a rah-rah guy behind you. And when things aren't going well, you want a guy that can keep it a little bit loose, keep it a little bit light. And I think that's what he brought for a lot of time. And for the success he had, let's not forget that everywhere he went, he had good success. So I think he's still my main guy. But the problem you've got is once you go past Maddon, you're talking about bench coaches and hitting coaches from other teams. And ultimately, how much do we pay an interest in that? I mean, we can read up on them and we can sort of take note, but you're not exactly going, oh yeah, Joe Espada, I've been looking at him for years. And he might be a great coach.
Yeah.
I mean, look what the Dolphins just did with a guy that wasn't really a household name until he was brought in. There are many ways to skin the cat, but I think for the Marlins to go with Maddon would be an excellent choice. That obviously, I'd hope that they know a lot more about these other guys than obviously we're going to know. So if it is one of these bench coaches from another team that's wowed them in the interview, or whether or not they've been keeping an eye on them for years, I mean, I think we all knew that Mattingly wasn't going to be here forever. So I'd like to think that the team have, in some capacity, always kept an eye on people and had an interest in these guys. You don't just pluck names out of a hat, obviously. So it'll be interesting to see what they do. But Maddon is still my 1A choice.
Yeah. The interesting bit that I know Craig shared on his own podcast and also with me was his sense was his gut feel was this might be a first-time manager for the Marlins. Not obviously a first-time coach, first-time manager, which I think is interesting. Pardon me, and that kind of takes away Joe Maddon clearly, and then you get into some of the other names that they've looked at, and the one that I would say has garnered the highest level of buzz from Marlins Twitter anyway was the guy you mentioned there, Joe Espada. Obviously was with the Marlins, and both kind of as a player and also as a coach. And clearly there's that connection there. He spent a good amount of years coaching with the Marlins too. More recently with the Astros. And listen, if you talk about teams that can just continue to stay at a level of success for a sustained period, boy oh boy, the Astros certainly are the the pinups for that. And I know we spent a lot of time focused with the Astros, focused in on the middle infield guys. I believe that's kind of where his specialism is kind of blended towards. I think that was from an article that the Fish Stripes put out there. So I thank those guys for keeping me up to date with the information here. Because like you said, Shaun, like I don't have the insight here. I'm not a specialist in bench coaches around Major League Baseball. I'm just not. I mean, I'm not a specialist even talking about the Marlins bench coaches, and that wouldn't be probably the best podcast ever because it hasn't been good. But nevertheless, the name Joe Espada certainly popped, I would say, with Marlins Twitter. He's a young guy. He's been around for a while. He's also been with the Marlins, but he's been with a successful organization that's rebuilt and found a way to keep a sustained winner. And I think it was Carlos Correa in the Fish Stripes article that had said, Joe Espada has been a big part of my progression and taking the next step and whatever. So for me, it feels like he ticks a lot of boxes here. Connection with the Fish, connection with a good team, and also manager. Like that feels like a nice fit. Marlins Twitter seem to be suggesting it, but there's a lot of teams with vacancies right now. And the question I've got for you, Shaun, is how appealing is this Marlins role right now? The manager gig for the Marlins. The other ones out there, obviously the White Sox are vacant. There's other vacancies too. There's quite a number of them. So where's the Marlins actually going to appear on like a wish list for someone that maybe have their pick of anywhere? They've obviously got the pitching. We know that. The offense is underwhelmed. They don't have the money. They don't have the fans in the seats. Like, it could be a tough sell to maybe a candidate that is getting multiple offers, do you think?
Yeah, I think that's spot on in the sense of if people have got multiple offers, it's going to be interesting. I think I'm a Marlins fan. I'm going to be biased. I think there's a lot to be excited about with this team, but that comes from my bias. But a coach that has options, I don't know whether the Marlins are going to be top of that list. I don't think that they're going to pay to be top of the list or create themselves onto the top of the list. I think that there are a limited amount of MLB jobs available. It's a set number. It's a job that is highly coveted. No matter how bad the team is or how bad a team is, someone's always want to take that job. So it's a desirable job, but it is a case of there are enough guys out there that are going to want the job that they're going to get a good option. But do they get the pick of the bunch? I mean, if I'm Maddon, do I prefer to go to Chicago? You know what? Maybe. They might not be in the best position right now, but they certainly have the capacity to grow financially. So it will be interesting. I think ultimately, yeah, the Marlins job is desirable because it's a major league job, and there is some excitement, but I don't think that we'll be knocking off other teams as far as ideas for the role being the one that's number one on these guys' list.
Yeah, I think that's fair. It's it can be it's a unique environment in many ways, Miami and the Marlins, I think, and you do have to buy into it. But at the same time, I do feel at this point in the Marlins kind of development, let's say, it gives someone the opportunity to be maybe a little bit more senior and have a bit more sway than perhaps other more established front offices and organizations and whatever. I think that's interesting where you get if I apply it maybe to football or soccer, and some guys are happy just to be brought in, be the coach, do their thing. Some guys want full ownership of everything. They want to be like a Jose Mourinho type vibe where they just have their fingers in everything and they're just a big part of all the decisions being made. And I get the sense that like you that could be on the cards maybe from a Marlins perspective because they've just got so many gaps in the front office, firstly. So like there's ways. So there's someone that could maybe craft a role or a unique kind of role or crossover. I don't know. I just feel like someone could get a little bit more control or ownership than perhaps they would do in a more established front office situation or organization. So I do think with that one is an interesting wrinkle. That's complete speculation on my front, by the way. So just have to call that out. But the third guy that has been interviewed that we have seen, this isn't speculation, is Pedro Grifol. Pronunciation may be off on that, by the way, but nevertheless, he has been with the Royals and bench coach for the Royals. What I would say on this one, the key bits that stood out for me is he is his approach in terms of analytics, I think, is a lot stronger than maybe like a Don Mattingly, for example. So I do sense that if they wanted to go more analytically driven, then maybe that would be a nice fit for the Fish. Equally, as I pointed out on Twitter, there's a crossover there with the Marlins, the number one paid offensive player for the Marlins, and maybe overall the number one paid Marlins player at $15 million next year, Jorge Soler. His breakout, his career year overlapped with Grifol. So, there's some familiarity there. Does that matter? Could that matter? I don't know. But at least the Marlins can, lean on Soler, get some insight there. What's he like as a guy? How does he get the best out of you? You start to get some inside knowledge. I think that's interesting. Sounds to me like the analytics are high. Soler, is he going to vouch for him? Yes or no? We'll wait and see. But, I do think it's an interesting one. Again, first-time manager ticks that box, not ticks the box, but maybe fits the profile. Analytically driven, maybe. Craig Mish did say they were maybe not quite heavily going down that line, which was interesting as well. But any further thoughts on him? I mean, I know relatively limited amounts, but the bits that I've read, I can see how that could happen. It may not blow you away as a name, but there's definitely a pathway to this happening, I think.
Absolutely. I mean, it is a case of why would we have ever heard of him? He's a bench coach in Kansas City.
Yeah, but they've not been good, by the way.
Yeah, you look at his job roles that he's been through. So he started as a scout and worked his way through pretty much every single job that you could imagine in baseball. So he's certainly been about, and he's certainly got a depth of knowledge. And yeah, the analytics, I think, I'm big into it, and I think successful teams need to be in on it as well. And then you look at the success that some teams have had with it. The idea that the Marlins have never really been all in, and for large swathes of time, they just completely ignored it as nonsense. And that didn't serve them very well, did it? So the idea that they're even going to touch, put a toe in the water of analytics is, in my opinion, a good thing. So maybe a guy that has that kind of, he's got that scouting knowledge, he's got that coaching knowledge, but he's also got that interest in the numbers as well. So I'm not expecting the Marlins to go full computer, but having someone that at least is aware of what it means and how to apply it would be important. And just to go back on your idea of a guy coming in and having full control, I mean, that would be incredibly desirable. It's almost a case of you can pick all your guys except one, because we're keeping Mel. Mm-hmm. And you see it in basketball as well, the idea that some of the higher name coaches get the option to be the GM as well, because they want that overarching control of, I want to coach the guys I want to coach, and I'm going to bring them in myself. Never really worked, because it's two more than full-time jobs that one person's trying to do. But being able to tell a first-time coach that you've got that power that maybe they wouldn't get if they went into a more established team would be, that is definitely something that would be interesting for any number of these guys.
For sure. How do you think, the other thing that's playing in my mind is, how do you think the change in rules is going to change the analytics side? And what I mean by that is, like, the shifts and all this kind of stuff. Like, how much is that actually going to impact things, you think, from those kind of heavy analytical guys? Is that going to hinder them, do you think? I guess it would do, because it feels like that is driven, the heart of it is driven analytically about stand here because more likely it's going to go there. But I don't know if that's going to hamper these guys or make them get even more creative. I don't know.
Well, it is a case of the shift is disappearing. We know this is going to happen. But I think that gets a lot of headlines in the idea of what analytics are and what modern baseball is compared to the traditional ways that baseball has been. But that's such a small sort of sector. The idea that if you look at Moneyball being how old it is now, like the things that were in Moneyball have been grown on, and some of them were wrong. You know, it's an evolution. It's a science almost. Well, it is a science, and you're always learning. And you're always realizing we know more than we used to, and some of the things we thought we used to know were actually wrong. So the idea that the shift is going, in my opinion, is sizable, but the area of sabermetrics is massive comparably. I mean, we're going to get into some things, I'm sure, in the off season about the team. The fact that the Marlins had for large periods of time a guy leading off that was an OBP under 300. You know, it's criminal. Just because he's got speed doesn't mean that he should be a leadoff hitter. There were many things, and that's basic. That's something that even a clown like me knows. So the fact that it's not being put into place by the Marlins is, in my eyes, it's criminal.
Well, you heard it here first. Shaun Barrett is a clown, a self-assessed clown, it seems. I think that's an overreaction. Nevertheless, guys, we're out of time. We're out of time for Tuesday's episode. A lot of World Baseball Classic and some managerial updates. I think at the moment it's a little bit too early to understand where we're up to. But the process will be lengthy and vast, and they will explore many avenues. So I guess it's a wait and see situation there. My overall view is I actually don't really care at this point. Like, it's not that I don't care, I just don't know. I'm not well equipped enough to have some insight to say this should be the guy. But I hope they make the right pick and get a change an approach, really, maybe from Donnie, and reboot the clubhouse environment. I think that's perhaps what we want to see. And I think the fundamental thing is try and work out how we can squeeze some value out of these hitters, try and get the offense rolling. And I don't know whether that's specifically the manager's role to be doing, but I think that plays a part. Nevertheless, guys, we're out of time on Tuesday's episode of Locked On Marlins. Thanks for joining me and Shaun Barrett, and we'll be back tomorrow. Which really will be. Me and Shaun are back tomorrow, starting some deep dives, actually. We're going to get into some of the 2022 numbers, and we're going to start specifically on the offensive side of the ball and very much into some of the infield guys. So we're going to dig into some numbers. Is there any hope? Yes, there is the spoiler. But nevertheless, join us tomorrow. We're going to start that series on Wednesday's episode of Locked On Marlins. Until then, see you tomorrow.